Tradition is rich in maxims called necessary truths, such as that 2 plus 2 equals 4, that space and time are infinitely divisible, that everything has a cause, and that God, or the most real of beings, necessarily exists. Many such propositions may be necessary, by virtue of the definitions given to their terms. Many may be true, and that the facts of nature confirm them, and some may be both necessary logically and true materially. But even then, the necessity will come from one quarter and the truth from another. This conclusion would be evident to anyone who had clearly conceived the nature of infinite being or the realm of essence, a conception in itself easy and inevitable when once attention has lighted upon it. So obvious and easy is this conception that it may be regarded as trivial and not worth dwelling on. Yet here it finds a momentous echo, which dispels half the doubts and worries of speculation. For if essences or possible terms of thought are infinite in number and variety, it follows that every particular fact is contingent, arbitrary, and logically unnecessary, since infinite alternatives were open to existence if existence had chosen to take a different form. Now it is precisely this unnecessary, arbitrary, contingent chance or fatality making existence at each point such as it is that determines what shall be true, that is, what elements of essence shall figure in that existence. So that truth being descriptive of existence and existence being contingent, truth will be contingent also. Let me analyze on these principles the four maxims adduced above, that 2 plus 2 equals 4, like all the rest of mathematics, is an equation making explicit certain essential relations between certain terms. Essential relations are all necessary, being based on the definitions or intuitions which distinguish those related terms, though it is by no means necessary or even possible to explore and make explicit in human discourse all the essential relations of the terms selected. Naturally, in human mathematics, there is a human element. Each intuitive mind darts in its own congenial direction and sees what a differently intuitive mind might have overlooked. And the range of thought also is human, like its pace and direction. One mind crawls where another wears 7-league boots. Yet by whatever leaps or on whatever scale this survey be made, if the essences first chosen are not dropped and confused with others, all explorations will help to fill in the same map, and the science of essence in that region will be enriched and consolidated. So far, truth has not been broached, and mathematics is like music, freely exploring the possibilities of form. And yet, notoriously, mathematics holds true of things, hugs and permeates them far more closely than does confused and inconstant human perception. So that the dream of many exasperated critics of human error has been to assimilate all science to mathematics, so as to make knowledge safe by making it, as Locke wished, direct perception of the relations between ideas. Unfortunately, knowledge would then never touch those matters of fact on which Locke was intent. The only serious value of those logical explorations would lie in their possible relevance to the accidents of existence. It is only in that relation and in that measure that mathematical science would cease to be mere play with ideas and would become true. That is, in a serious sense, would become knowledge. Now the seriousness of mathematics comes precisely of its remarkable and exact relevance to material facts, both familiar and remote, so that mathematical equations, besides being essentially necessary in themselves, are often also true of the world we live in. And this in a surprising measure, for when once any essence falls within the sphere of truth, all its essential relations do so too, and the necessity of these relations will, on that hypothesis, form a necessary complement to a proposition that happens to be true. This same necessity, however, but have nothing to do with truth if the terms it connects were not exemplified in existence. In this way, mathematical calculations, far outrunning experiment, often turn out to be true of the physical world, as if, per impossibile, they could be a true a priori. But in fact, nature, that had to have some form or other, is organized and deployed on principles which, in human language, are called number, shape, and measurable time, categories which for that reason have taken root in human language and science. Yet these categories would have no truth or applicability whatever if existence were entirely mental and sentimental. They would then be ideal fictions or games of apperception, with their own sporting rules, like the game of chess, but with no cognitive function in respect to the dynamic world in which life would arise, and in which these games would be carried on. Now, as a matter of fact, there is a psychological sphere to which logic and mathematics do not apply. There, the truth is dramatic. That 2 plus 2 equals 4 is not true of ideas. One idea added to another in actual intuition makes still only one idea, or it makes 3. For the combination with the relations perceived forms one complex essence, and yet the original essences remain distinct as elements in this new whole. This holds of all moral, aesthetic, and historical units. They are merged and reconstituted with every act of apperception. Each essence evoked reverts, when lost sight of, to its limbo of latent forms. It cannot contribute genetically or dynamically, being unsubstantial, to compose the next apparition. Although life in plants and animals may be capable of mathematical treatment at one pervasive material level, none of the vital unities or tropes are so capable. Moreover, this is not due altogether to the imagination superposing its views on the flux of existence. For a special organic unity which breeds imagination and will, and superposes them on events, cannot be itself imaginary, since it creates a specific fact, namely, this very will or imagination. There are therefore levels of reality, and these the most important to mankind, that elude all mathematical axioms. In the second maxim adduced, that space and time are infinitely divisible, we pass to an axiom, the truth of which is extremely doubtful, even in the physical world. Special space and time, that is, extension and duration as given to intuition, and space and time as defined geometrically, are indeed infinitely divisible. Scale in them is elastic and utterly unsubstantial, so that there is room for the most elaborate ideal event or object within the smallest fraction of time or space. But this hardly seems to be true in the chemical or animal or astronomical spheres, where scale is not variable fantastically, and this for the best of reasons, namely that in nature empty space and time do not pre-exist, so that existent beings of extensible and unascertainable dimensions may drop into them later, but on the contrary, a physical flux pulsing through natural moments and carrying a definite volume of events with it creates a real time by its rhythms and a real space by its organic complexity. These native dimensions of the real may indeed be measured and graphically noted in our science, as living music may be measured and noted in a musical score, but the ideal qualities of the medium for such a transcription can no more be imposed on nature by our definitions than the flatness or infinite divisibility of the paper, or the lines of the clef can impose their graphic qualities upon music. For want of making this distinction, hopeless difficulties and fatuous assertions have been imported into philosophy. Sometimes nature has been abolished for not conforming to logic, and sometimes logic has corrected nature so as to secure an agreement. Yet the true agreement existed from the first, within its natural limits, a friendly concomitance between material events and the free symbolism proper to animal sense or imagination. excited as these must be by those material contacts and organic tensions. There is both precision and poetry in the intricacies of essence, if selectively explored. But the scientific imagination is idolatrous when it interpolates its creations in the dynamic structure of nature. They describe that structure from without. They are not contained within it. They are transcriptions, not insights. We pass to the third maxim, that everything has a cause. The balance between necessity and truth is reversed. This maxim has no logical cogency, but the presumption it expresses is backed by a good deal of evidence. In search of necessity, we might correct the statement and say that every effect has a cause, but this truism would leave us to consider whether every event is actually an effect. Certainly not, unless the series of events runs back to infinity, and even in that case, apart from the heavy strain imposed on human imagination and credulity, the question would arise whether every part of every event was caused by its antecedents, or only its initial phase, or its approximate outline. The latter is the plausible view adopted by Aristotle, and reasonable if we believe in the dominance of a conceptual pattern over the flux of existence. Events will fall into certain classes. Animals and their passions will exemplify certain permanent types, but there will be a margin of incalculable variation due to accidental conjunctions or lapses in the execution of the dominant themes. And here again, there are alternative possibilities. These lapses or conjunctions may all have mechanical causes, according to deeper laws of matter, traceable beneath the moral morphology of events, or, on the contrary, variations may be free and groundless, though kept within certain bounds by the magic of hereditary types, so that the old equilibrium of the cosmos will right itself after each casual oscillation. Or perhaps these oscillations are casual only in appearance, and from the point of view of their antecedents, while by a secret conspiracy they, or some of them, steadily make for one far-off divine event. And it may have been these successive variations, mechanically uncaused but prophetically inspired, that have created, as it were on the way, the stock genera and species of our transitory world. These would then be restive in their trammels and destined to be superseded. If all variations and free choices were so directed, they might all be said to have a cause, not in the past, but in the future. And the providential harmony of all the parts and of all the incidents would seem, in one sense, to render them necessary. Not that logically a different issue would not be conceivable, but that morally and emotionally it would be unthinkable that any absurd accident should ever come groundlessly to mar so perfect a plan. Nevertheless, the necessity of each element for the perfection of a particular design confers no necessity upon that design as a whole, nor compels nature to adopt it. Whatever regularity or unity the existing world may exhibit, the existence of such unity or regularity remains a perfect contingent matter of fact. But have we not heard of an ontologically necessary being, the essence of which involves existence? We have heard of it, and this typically metaphysical contention brings to a head and exhibits boldly the equivocation involved in the idea that any truth, and this typically metaphysical contention brings to a head and exhibits boldly the equivocation involved in the idea that any truth is necessarily true. That most real of beings, said St. Anselm, necessarily exist. For evidently, if he did not exist, far from being most real, it would not be real at all. Is then reality, we may ask, the same as existence? And can existence have degrees? St. Anselm explains that by greater reality he means more than greater quantity of material being. He means also greater dignity, perfection, and moral greatness. Now, a non existent essence would woefully lack moral greatness, perfection, or dignity. It would be a contemptible ghost, a miserable nothing, undoubtedly for a care laden mind seeking salvation, unless it sought salvation from existence. Power, which certainly involves existence, must be the first mark of reality and value. What is without power will be without importance. Granting this, the ontological proof is cogent. The most powerful of beings necessarily exist, because power is only another name for the difference which the existence of one thing makes in the existence of another. But a less religious or more practical investigator of power might well come to the conclusion that this greatest, most formidable, and most real of beings was matter, meaning by this not only the substance of interacting things, but the principles of their interaction. At the other pole of reflection, on the contrary, as among the Indians or the Asiatics, the most real of things might seem to be pure being, or the realm of essence, excluding change and existence altogether, because in change and existence there is essential privation. That from which we lapse or to which we aspire is no longer or not yet, and in being for the moment something in particular we renounce and reject being in every other form. The truly ontological proof for a pure ontologist would therefore assert not that the most real of beings necessarily exists, but that the most real of beings necessarily does not exist. In other words, real would be identified with necessary being or essence, and this existing world of limitation, contrariety, and care would be pronounced an illusion. I do not mention this paradox in order to laugh at St. Anselm or at his many solemn disciples, but precisely to show that behind the sophistry of their words there is, or may be, a secret allegiance to pure and necessary being. Their play on the word reality perhaps masked an instinctive revolt against worldliness, a desire to throw off somehow the incubus of alien facts and irrational compulsions, and find a way back into safety and peace. They called pure being most real because to their hearts it was most satisfying. Consequently, their argument was fallacious and even ridiculous. If by necessary existence we understand necessity attaching to events or to facts, that is, to contingencies, yet the same argument breathes a further intuition and a final judgment of the spirit, if it intends rather to deny final validity to an existential order which, by definition, is arbitrary, treacherous, and self-destructive, a realm of being over which inessential relations are compulsory and essential relations are powerless. When we are asked to shift the meaning of terms so that, at least in God, essence may involve existence, we are left in doubt as to the direction in which the assimilation is to take place. Are we to idealize existence so that it may be nothing but essence, or to hypostatize essence so as to make it exist? When we speak of being or reality, are we intent on the miracle of existence? And do we pass from that mystery to the conviction that the divine essence is just this miracle, this absolute power, this abysmal fact? Or, free from all trouble or wonder, and in placid intellectual clearness, do we first demonstrate to ourselves the necessity and infinity of possible being or essence, so that for us this miracle of existence becomes rather a scandal? For why should innocent and merely possible being be raised for a moment at this or that point into an insane prominence, impossible to sustain or to justify, whilst all the rest of essence is veiled by a passionate ignorance and proclaimed to be nothing? In the latter case, existence would involve privation, partiality, ignorance, instability, and grotesque pride, with a consequent perpetual misery. Instead of the word existence, the ontological argument should then employ the word reality, meaning the fullness and indestructibility, essential indestructibility, of being. If we make this substitution, feeling the pregnancy of our terms, we may come to see how the maximum of reality might logically involve infinity, impassiveness, and eternity, all of which are contrary to the limitation, flux, and craving inherent in existence. No essence, not even this essence of existence, has any power to actualize itself in a fact, nor does such actualization bring to any essence an increment in its logical being, only an alien, ambiguous status, no sooner acquired than lost. The existence of God is therefore not a necessary truth, for if the proposition is necessary, its terms can be only essences, and the word God itself would then designate a definable idea. It would not be a proper name indicating an actual power. If, on the contrary, the word is such a proper name, and God is a psychological, moral being energizing in space and time, then his existence can be proved only by the evidence of these natural manifestations, not by dialectical reasoning upon the meanings of terms.